What is up, guys? It's me, Rahul, and today we're going to be talking about the World Championship metagame, or at least what I expect heading into the tournament. If you are someone who is participating in the event, this video will be very nice for you. If you are someone who is watching the event and enjoying it, well, enjoy the ride, and I hope that you guys have a good time from home and enjoy everything. I guess I could show where you guys can spectate, probably. Yeah, I think you can spectate. I have no clue, but there's a bunch of stream links, okay? This is not my job. I'm not a streamer. Anyway, that's not my job. We're going to talk about Pokemon decks. That was embarrassing. But you guys should keep a track of all the action. Hopefully, I will be doing well. I will be competing on day 2 of the World Championships, for those of you who don't know. So I've already auto-qualified for the Friday event. Day 1 will begin on Thursday with an opening ceremony, and at that point, you know, the tournament kicks off. You guys will get 7 to 8 rounds of tournament action into the next day, with 9 rounds cutting into, or 8 to 9 rounds cutting into either a +5 or straight into a top 8. So check it out, and hope you guys have a good time over the course of the tournament, because I am excited to be at the World Championships for the first time in 3 years and have a good time. So while we're kicking things off, we're going to start off with where I began my prep, NAIC. So NAIC concluded, and it's been a little over a month. So what do I do? What do I do? What does my group do? What do players do when this kind of situation happens? Well, first and foremost, you have to take into account all of the decks that did well at NAIC. You have to pretty much look at the top 8, because if a deck top 8's an IC, it is no fluke. That deck has gone through hell and back to basically be in this top 8, so you kind of have to evaluate it. What does that mean? Azul's Arceus Flying Pika deck, now that is on the table as a consideration for some people, something to beat, something to play. Now, as I am preparing, I realize that this deck has a lot more flaws than it does have benefits. The biggest flaw being its Arceus and Teleon matchup. Its Palkia matchup is not always favored, but if you win the flip, you are definitely favored. And obviously Sanders' Mewtwo Miltank deck. Now, this Mewtwo Miltank deck is the probably biggest impactful deck from NAIC as a whole. I don't care about any other deck. This deck is the biggest impactful deck, like most impactful deck, whatever you want to call it. Mewtwo V Union is now a deck to watch out for, and I think this will be the 3rd most played deck at day 1 of the World Championships. I think Arceus and Teleon and Palkia and Teleon will be the 1st and 2nd most played decks by a wide margin, because they are the 2 best decks in the format. I think that the list that Isaiah Bradner played, also the list that I played, was the best list for the tournament, but I do think it has to adapt in some capacity, because it does not have answers to the Miltank deck. Like, it doesn't have great answers to Miltank decks, and I think Azul's deck is also a problem if that you're expecting that as a threat. That being said, I do think 4 Battle VFA Pass 4 Irida is the way to go. The rest of the shell can maybe be tweaked a little bit. I don't really know what to move around yet. And if I did, you guys will find that at the event. So some of those things to keep in mind moving forward. So 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2 are Arc Intel, Palkia Intel, in no particular order for the 1, 2. Those 2 will have the most representation. I believe that Arceus and Teleon will have the most representation by far. But others can disagree with me by saying Palkia, and I think both could be correct in any capacity. 3 will be Mewtwo V Union, and I think 4 will still be Mew V Max. You guys should not forget about Mew V Max. Yes, I know it's on the decline. Yes, I know that James Gillespie was the only one who really did well with Mew. I think after James, you don't see a Mew, until 34, 35. I know Devin Ardisono was on 2 back-to-back win-ins, I guess. In theory, I think he lost to Isaiah and to John. But Mew, while making day 2, still did not, once again, did not perform. So you can see the deck itself is not bad. It's just that it is not a deck that a lot of people feel comfortable. Look at all the bottom tables are basically like Mew's. I just don't think it's a deck that you can feel comfortable bringing into a tournament of this size. With a good conscience, I guess. It's just one of those decks where it's it's tough to bring through, but there are a lot of day 1 players who have earned their invite or earned those last couple of points off the back of this Mew deck. So that basically for them means that, hey, maybe I bring this back, maybe I run it back because of the familiarity with the deck, how comfortable I feel with the deck. That can happen. So those are the top 4 far and away. Those are the 4 decks you need to prepare for heading into the World Championships. There are fringe decks like Gigas, Dialga, Blissey. Those are some stuff that you should also keep an eye out for, because they are not bad decks, but they are not something you should actively prepare against. You should have a game plan into them. Besides that, I don't expect you guys to have like all the answers all the time into those matchups. I wouldn't have like Rayquaza, Samurott, Flaffy-Box. Like, I'm not coming in with answers to all of those things, but at the very least, I will know what those decks are, and you guys should know what those decks are and have some sort of a game plan in your head, even if you've not practiced it. Ice Rider Palkia has become one of the new hot new flavors of the month. I don't know if it's legit. I don't know if it's like kind of fake. From my practice and experience, it has not been the most amazing deck. It has been very inconsistent, but it does pose a gigantic threat to Palkia decks because Max Lance can set up the numbers that you want. I think Arcantel beats Ice Rider Calyrex actually pretty convincingly, unless Ice Rider high rolls a little bit. But again, I think it's a lot of making sure you understand the matchup and have played against Ice Rider a couple times, because if it's your first time playing against Ice Rider sitting down at the World Championships, you will be in for a little bit of a loop. So make sure you prep against this matchup. This is the not hot new flavor of the month. So that being said, we've seen all the NAIC decks. We've seen some of the higher power decks. What are some of the fringe decks we have to prepare for? Well, that's where we go to Play.Limitless. This is where, I know I just went from dark to light mode. Wild. I just blinded myself. But you come here to kind of see what decks are really being played to a heavy capacity. And I think you should at least get some prep against some of these top decks in this format. What did Pogo really add to the format? Well, we got Solrock Lunatone, which is something that you should at least know how it operates, so you know what to target and when to target those threats, when to use your Shuffle Draw supporters, when to disrupt, when not to disrupt, know the tempo plays against Solrock Lunatone. While it's not the best deck, it is a deck that could show up because day 1 is the Wild Wild West, and even in day 2, some players could just say, like, screw it, I want to play something funny. Same with Reggies. Like, you should know how to deal with both of these decks, which one of the Reggies, which part of the Solrock Lunatone deck, what are the threats, what do you need to analyze to kind of move forward. Same with Dialga. Like, you should at least look at Dialga lists and see, like, hey, Xander Perot created like this new iteration of Dialga. Is that the real rage? Is that everything? Or are these new Dialga decks that were played, I don't know, as soon as July 30th, with this like stage 2 Blastoise? Like, is this a real thing? Like, is this something you should be prepared for? At least look through the cards and look through and make sure you understand that. Or like, obviously, like we've talked about the top 3, as well as Mewtwo V Union, which has become more like obviously prevalent in the recent years, or not recent years, recent a little bit. Inteleon box with Charizard not V-Star, with Charizard Radiant is one of the cards that you guys need to prepare for as well. All the Radiant Charizard is one of the cards I think you will see in some decks being splashed here and there. So that is something you guys need to prepare for. Excited Heart, using the Magma Base and Raihan combo to kind of power it up, using Twin Energies to get it early, popping and running. You can look at some of these lists here to kind of get a better idea of how it works. Cards like this Druddigon, which I knew existed, but you guys need to know if it exists or not. Obviously, I'm not going to be here to tell you all the tech cards you need to understand and know, because at that point, Chef's given up too much that he's cooking. But you should be looking at some of these lists that already exist. You should be looking, because a lot of these ideas that I've had did not come from me originally. They came from a certain source, or they came from a certain location. And Play.Limitless is an excellent place to look for decks. Like, look at what's winning. Look at what's doing well. Because if they are winning these online events, they're not always a fluke. Yes, it could be like random. Yes, online events are like less prestigious or whatever, but there is merit to some of these tech cards that are in these decks. There is merit to some things that are going on in here. So keep the Inteleon deck with the Radiant Charizard in the back of your mind, because that deck has been picking up a little bit of steam. I think its biggest flaw is that it can't finish games in a BO3 efficiently, and it is very very weak to path, Roxanne, but you still should be able to understand what's going on there. Dark Inteleon has kind of fallen out of favor in favor of the new Radiant Charizard build, but you can see it's still performing to a certain degree. It's just become more of a box deck with the lightning type attackers and the Zapdos to deal with both those two heavy matchups, because you need the lightning type attackers to deal with Palkia, and you need the Zapdos to deal with Arcantel. So basically your game plan is to kill the Dunny 2 times, go through the rods, and then work through there. There is also this Arc. Let me see if it's under just vanilla Arc. Arc. No, that's... No. I was trying to find the Arc Mewtwo decks that have been popping up as well. There's a ton of content on some of these top decks. I know Omnipoke is doing a very good primer on some of the decks you need to watch out for the World Championships. Oh, also Stonejourner. I do think Stonejourner will show up in some capacity. While this deck is not the most consistent or the best deck by any means, I think you should at least know what the deck is aiming to do, what the healing cards do, what the disruption cards do. It's just understanding some of these cards that are played in these decks, so you're not surprised when you sit down and all of a sudden it's your first time reading Schoolgirl, or it's your first time reading, I don't know, Team Yaltowel. Like, you should have some sort of semblance of understanding of what to do or a game plan. Some of these bottom decks are not like necessarily the most impactful, but I would still read up on them a little bit with the time that you have. For anyone who's flying out, just not get Wi-Fi or whatever, but like download a bunch of lists or screenshot a bunch of lists and just like start reading through them and getting an understanding of like what's played in some of these lower tier decks, so you're not surprised and take a loss out of nowhere at the World Championships, because taking an L on day one, or even in day two, taking an L is hard. It kills your whole tournament. One loss basically like dooms you. You can never get a loss after that one, which is really scary to think about, because both years that I've done one at the World Championships, I've only had 2 losses under my belt. So kind of crazy. Arc Duraludon, another one to keep an eye out for. But in order, like I talked about, Palk and Arc, or like Arc Palk, Intel's straight versions. The Arc version that heals a lot, the Palk version that gets in there with the cross switchers, does a ton of damage, can really pose any threat on turn 2. 2 best decks in the format. Two decks that you should have a game plan in going in. Either you're playing those or playing a way to beat those or have an answer into those. 3 is Mewtwo V Union. It's a drop to Mewtwo V Union, but I think 3 is Mewtwo V Union is a deck you have to worry about in some capacity. The Miltanks, the Blissies, or not Blissies, the Miltanks and the V Union together are just a huge problem to kind of deal with. Pokestop is another great card that they have or added to their repertoire of cards moving forward. And Mew Genesect takes that 4th slot, where Mew Gen is one of those decks where it still is not the best deck by any means, but it is one of those decks where, like, if everything goes your way, like someone can draw all the right cards in all the right orders and do very, very well with Mew. Even though you have a game plan into Mew, sometimes it comes down to them going Catcher Heads, Alessis Sparkle, attach Tablet, turn 1, pop your Lone Arceus, Lone Palkia, and all of a sudden you've already lost the game. And so that's something that's unavoidable, and that is the allure of Mew. But Path Roxanne is something that does give you a chance at any point in the game in that matchup. So Path Roxanne does make Mew fall to a hard 4th, and then I think 5th would be the Calyrex Inteleon, or like Calyrex Palkia deck. And like 5th, 6th, there's like that deck and Arc Flying Pikachu. So prepare for those 6 decks accordingly at the very least. And by the time we are, I think, what is it, 10 days from now? 2 weeks from now? 2 weeks from now will be the start of the World Championships on the 18th. So stay tuned, guys. Watch it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Share it with a friend. Share it with a family member. I don't care. For me, having Worlds be competitive in mainstream is one of my most important, and like, I don't know, it's cool. It's cool to have people like understand what the World Championships is, watch it, recognize it, whatever. So all that being said, thank you for watching. If you guys enjoyed the content, as always, please subscribe. I will try to have something up tomorrow or over the weekend. I will be gone out of town for the weekend once again. Been really busy leading up to the World Championships, had a lot of stuff to take care of. So yeah, if you guys want to see something ahead of time, let me know, because next week is the last week I can make content before I head out to the World Championships. And while I'm there, I plan on just only recording for my vlog and focusing on the event. So I hope you guys can understand, and I will see you guys then.